341.1. Describe the structure of the Florida and federal court systems. The Florida court system is organized into a 4-tier structure. County courts. Courts of limited jurisdiction handling minor offenses, county municipal ordinance violations, and civil disputes under $50,000. Circuit courts. Courts of general jurisdiction handling domestic relations, juvenile delinquency dependency, probate, civil disputes over $50,000, and all felony offenses. District Courts of Appeal, otherwise known as DCA. Intermediate appellate courts that review decisions appealed from the circuit courts. Florida Supreme Court, the highest court in the state, reviewing constitutional questions in capital felony cases involving the death penalty. The federal court system follows a 3-tier structure. The U.S. District Courts, the primary trial level courts for federal criminal and civil cases. U.S. Circuit Courts of Appeals, intermediate appellate courts reviewing decisions from district courts within their geographic region. And third, U.S. Supreme Court, the highest court in the nation, serving as the final arbiter on matters of federal and constitutional law. 341.2. Describe the roles of the primary personnel of the court system. Judge presides over court proceedings, interprets and rules on matters of law, and determines sentences. Prosecutor represents the interest of the state, files formal charges, and presents evidence to prove guilt. Defense attorney represents the accused individual, ensures their constitutional rights are protected, and presents a legal defense. Clerk of the court manages court files, maintains records, issues legal paperwork, and administers oaths. Bailiff provides physical security, preserves order within the courtroom, and monitors defendants and jurors. Court reporter creates an official, verbatim written record of everything spoken during formal proceedings. 342.1. Describe the function of a first appearance hearing. A first appearance hearing must take place within 24 hours of a suspect's arrest. Its primary functions are to have a judge formally inform the defendant of the criminal charges against them, advise them of their legal right to counsel, review the arrest documents to ensure probable cause exists, and determine conditions of pretrial release, bail, or bond. 342.2. Describe the role of an officer during a first appearance hearing. An officer generally does not attend first appearance hearings in person unless specifically requested by the prosecutor or judge. The officer's role is typically fulfilled by ensuring that a complete, legally sound, and legally probable cause affidavit is submitted immediately following the arrest, providing the judge with the necessary facts to make an informed ruling on probable cause and bond conditions. 342.3. Explain the functions of arraignments, pretrial releases, and bond hearings. Arraignment, a formal court proceeding where the defendant is officially read the final criminal charges filed by the prosecutor and enters an initial plea of guilty, not guilty, or no contest, otherwise known as nolo contendere. Pretrial release, mechanisms allowing a defendant to remain outside of jail while awaiting trial, often accompanied by specific conditions like electronic monitoring or travel restrictions. Bond hearing, a proceeding where a judge reviews the defendant's criminal history, community ties, and financial status to establish lower or modify a monetary bond amount or enforce a no bond status for public safety. 342.2. Describe how to testify in a deposition. When testifying in a deposition, an officer must answer all questions truthfully, clearly, and concisely under oath. The officer should listen closely to the entire question before answering, answer only what is asked without volunteering extra information, maintain a professional demeanor, and refer accurately to their written reports if they need to refresh their memory. 342.5. Recognize the importance of reading a transcription after a deposition. Reviewing the written transcript after a deposition allows an officer to verify that the court reporter accurately captured their testimony. This review gives an officer a chance to correct any typographical or transcription errors before signing the document, ensuring that their statements cannot be easily twisted to impeach their credibility during a subsequent trial. 342.6. Describe the function of a suppression hearing. A suppression hearing is a pretrial proceeding where a judge reviews a defense motion to exclude specific evidence from trial. The defense argues that the evidence was gathered unlawfully by police through a constitutional violation, such as an illegal search or a coerced confession, and asks the judge to suppress it under the exclusionary rule. 342.7. Describe the function of a pretrial meeting. A pretrial meeting is an informal conference between the prosecuting attorney and law enforcement officer. Its purpose is to thoroughly review the facts, evaluate the evidence and written statements, discuss the case strategy, and prepare the officer for trial testimony. 342.8. Describe the process of a trial by judge or a trial by jury for an adult and a juvenile. Adult jury trial. A panel of citizens hears the evidence presented by the prosecution and defense and must reach a unanimous verdict of guilty or not guilty. Adult bench trial, otherwise known as trial by judge. The judge acts as both the trier of law and the trier of fact, listening to the evidence and rendering the final verdict without a jury. Juvenile trial, or an adjudicatory hearing. Juveniles do not have a constitutional right to a jury trial in delinquency proceedings. Their cases are heard via a bench trial before a circuit judge, who determines whether the juvenile committed the delinquent act and enters an adjudication of delinquency. 342.9. Describe the function of a sentencing hearing. A sentencing hearing takes place after a defendant has been found guilty at trial or has entered a plea of guilty or no contest. During this proceeding, the judge reviews sentencing guidelines, listens to arguments from the prosecution and defense, hears victim impact statements, and formally imposes a sentence, which may include fines, probation, or incarceration. 342.10. Describe the function of a violation of probation hearing. A violation of probation, otherwise known as VOP, hearing is a non-jury proceeding where a judge determines whether a probationer willfully and substantially violated the conditions of their court-ordered supervision. The standard of proof is a preponderance of the evidence, which is a lower standard than the proof beyond a reasonable doubt required at a criminal trial. 343.1. Describe the role of arrest warrants, capiases, or pickup orders when making an arrest. Arrest warrant. A signed judicial order directing officers to arrest an adult suspect based on a fresh finding of probable cause. Capias. A specific type of arrest warrant issued directly by a judge after a formal charging document, otherwise known as information or indictment, has already been filed against an individual who failed to appear in court or is evading prosecution. Pickup order. A specialized judicial directive commanding law enforcement to take a juvenile into secure custody for dependency or delinquency reasons. 343.2. Describe how to serve a civil process. Serving a civil process involves formally delivering legal documents such as a summons, complaint, subpoena, or eviction notice to a designated individual. In Florida, civil process is typically executed by a sheriff or an authorized special process server. The server must locate the individual, verify their identity, deliver the documents, and complete a formal return of service to document that service was successfully completed. 343.3. Describe how to legally execute a search warrant. To legally execute a search warrant, officers must carry a copy of the warrant signed by a judge and arrive at the location within its valid statutory time frame. Unless granted specific no-knock authority due to extreme danger or threat of evidence destruction, officers must knock on the door, announce their identity and purpose, and provide a reasonable opportunity for the occupants to respond. Once inside, the search must be restricted strictly to the locations and items listed in the warrant, and officers must provide the occupant with an accurate written inventory receipt of all property seized.